So good
Right.
afternoon. We'll have my weekly chat with Sue Price, the First Lady of Men's Rights in Australia, in my opinion. And the floor is open. Sue, what are we discussing today?
I thought we might have a look at perhaps some of the beginnings of the feminist situation and why we're facing what we're facing now, which is really, really bad situation. And mainly because I was referred to a book by Herbert Purdy, and he's written a book about Their Angry Creed, which is all about the beginning of feminisms, how it started, how it's developed, and the damage that it's now doing to our society. It's a really good book. I would suggest anyone who has an interest in this to get a copy, available on all the usual Google places. And there's also a video online, which you can watch and have a look. He gave a presentation to an international conference on men and boys in 2016 in London. And I was just engrossed with the whole thing. Everything he said was spot on. He didn't mince words. It was very, very, straight through. Let's talk about it as it is and, see what we can do about it. And that's what it was like. And it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would encourage anyone who's got an interest in this to follow on.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. You've sent it to me, but I will get around to watching it this afternoon for sure. It's only, I think, from memory, it's a 36-minute clip, roughly.
Something like that. Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah. He quoted in his book, hang on, where have I got it? There was this is when I first saw it a number of years ago. Mallory Millett wrote an article after she was staying with her older sister, Kate Millett, and she was doing a degree and she did a PhD. And she wrote a book called Sexual Politics. And this Mallory was quite shocked by what happened. She went along to a dinner with a number of other people, and they had sat around a large table as the chairperson opening the meeting with a back and forth recitation, like a litany, a type of prayer done in Catholic Church. But now it was Marxism, the Church of the Left, mimicking religious practice. It started off as, "Why are we here today?" she asked. "To make revolution," they answered. "What kind of revolution?" she replied. "The cultural revolution," they chanted. "And how do we make cultural revolution?" she demanded. "By destroying the American family," they answered. "How do we destroy the family?" she came back. "By destroying the American patriarch," they cried exuberantly. "And how do we destroy the American patriarch?" she replied. "By taking away his power." "How do we do that?" "By destroying monogamy," they shouted. "How do we destroy monogamy?" Their answer, this is the girl writing, the answer left me dumbstruck, breathless, disbelieving my ears. Was I on planet Earth? Who were these people? And the answer was by promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality. They resounded. How's that for a beginning?
Yeah,
This was the pre-discussion to the establishment of the National Organization of Women in America. So
no room for equality in that statement, is there?
None whatsoever. This was the only way to do this, they said, was to invade every American institution. Everyone must be permeated with the revolution. The media, the educational system, universities, high schools, K-12, school boards, etc. Then the judiciary, the legislatures, the executive branches, and even the library system. So this was all planned. This has been actioned. over the last 30, 40 years. And we now have a situation where our lifestyle, our acceptance of marriage, or our enjoyment of marriage is being destroyed. We're not producing enough babies to cover the number who are dying or who leave the country. We're in decline as a race and as a people.
Well, and they're shaming a lot of men and boys for being men and boys. And coincidentally not that the Family Law Act kicked in 1975. So we're now reaping the disgusting inequality benefits that's forced upon most families that are fast becoming single-parent families across the country, which is traumatizing children.
That's quite right. And, we have a real problem. We have to find a way to fix it. And that's the hard part. I've been racking my brain for the last 30 years to find a way to do it. But the difficulty is to get enough people saying the same thing and targeting the issues that we need to target. I've tried to encourage people over the years to write emails, send emails on. If I write an email or anyone else does, such as Davia, I'll tell you about Davia in a minute, they can forward the emails on to every politician that they know, and even the ones they don't know. They can send them on to newspapers, to talkback radio, anyone in the media. And if enough of us do it, it's going to raise their interest. And that means maybe if we can raise their interest, they'll start to think, oh, maybe we'd better do something about this. Maybe we'd better start to listen. Yeah, because that's not what happens at the moment, because the women's groups, unfortunately, have multi-million dollar, billions of dollars given to them to promote their argument that we want to get rid of domestic violence by the year 2030 or whatever it is, and based on the supposition that all men are violent and lots of violence is going on, which of course we know is not true according to the research that's been done, because a lot of the research shows domestic violence is virtually committed on a 50-50 basis by both men and women. So there's really not much point in it. I think there should be, all right, let's have a minister for people's health. Doesn't have to be gender specific. It can be just everybody in Australia should have a representation for good health practices.
Exactly.
We obviously don't have that.
That would be extremely inclusive, wouldn't it, Sue?
Well, it'd have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And the same with having an office for women. Why do we need an office for women? We don't have an office for men, but we don't particularly want an office for men because it just, again, it's dividing the nation. Yep. Have an office for people, for the well-being of people.
The Special Envoy for Men's Health, Dan Rapaccioli, in the recent cabinet reshuffle announced by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Dan Rapaccioli was appointed as the Special Envoy for Men's Health. This role focuses on addressing men's health challenges, including mental health, suicide prevention, and chronic disease, particularly in regional and remote communities. Now, given that the three main situational distresses that men face in this country, which is coercing them into suicide, is 1, family-driven court orders, 2, false family domestic violence allegations, and 3, I believe the main contributing factor is parental alienation. None of those 3 have been addressed. So what is he actually going to accomplish moving forward?
Well, I think just what he says, doing general health and, picking out certain things like suicide rate and what was the other one there? There was another one there that they were going to be looking at, but it's not going to make any difference. So it'll be tokenism, that this is what we're doing, but how much money are they going to provide? What services are they going to provide?
Yeah.
Are they going to be?
The sad reality is he's released his recent public statements were men need to learn how to talk to mates. Now,
I was just going to say the first thing they will do is blame the men for not doing what they say they should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they've done all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, that they'll just say, or learn to talk to mates, you know, tell your doctor, don't go to the doctor even, you know. It's all these things. They blame men for their behavior that is really something that outsiders need to, you know, do something about their treatment of men,
Yeah.
because that's what's causing it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But the problem we've got is there's more ladies like yourself that stand up for men's rights than there is men. For one reason or another, you'll get 50,000 people to attend a bloody football match on the weekend. But you won't get anywhere near that amount of numbers, as we both know, when we're standing up for our rights.
The great trouble, Daniel, is that if a man speaks out, and he speaks out, say at work, or work hears about it, he runs a real risk of losing his job, because it will be seen as being negative if you're actually talking about men's issues. And that's the problem. So I think a lot of them are absolutely terrified to say anything, and they've been conditioned now over the years, shut up, don't talk about it.
Yes.
And that's what's happening.
It's quite poignant that we touch on this topic, because I posted up on Facebook this morning asking why men are so fearful to have a public opinion, and is it because of the legal gag orders? And at the last check of most of the comments, it's the main answer is that it's because we're all legally gagged, and we're all holding on to this slight bit of hope that just maybe if we do as we're told and we don't challenge the biased family court orders, maybe we'll get some time with our children in the future.
Yeah, well, that's because it's stressed very, very strongly to them. Do not talk about your case. Do not identify anybody. Do not say even where they live or who they are. Nothing at all. So they're completely silenced. And of course, the media, even if we were saying, well, why don't we get some more publicity? The media aren't interested unless they've got faces. They can put faces to the story. Otherwise, it's got no interest in them. And of course, then they're under the pressure from the feminist group to don't, you know. These men are all aggressive. They're all violent. They're all guilty of domestic violence. We're trying to sort them out. So don't give them any credence. It's like this last week, a fortnight or so, we've had there was a woman who killed 3 children, set them alight.
Yes.
There was another woman, the older woman, the 61-year-old, who killed 2. I think there were 5 and 6. There's another trial going on where that woman has allegedly poisoned a family with poisoned mushrooms.
Oh, the Victorian lady. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a whole heap of things going on, even this week, but it's just not mentioned.
No.
Never is. In fact, I actually saw for the first time in the Courier Mail today a woman who stabbed someone, stabbed a man, and it was actually described as a domestic violence incident.
Oh,
and I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's
very
really amazing, because they just don't tag it with domestic violence if a woman does anything.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
To just touch on the whole men are silenced and women are encouraged to speak their truth, I'll take your mind back a little bit to Miss Brittany Higgins, the case there where the Supreme Court judge warned this woman not to speak about the case, and she was led out by the front of the court by her legal team to make a press statement. Now,
yeah, I saw that.
Transpose the genders, and that was a man that was warned not to. He would have been led directly to jail in handcuffs for speaking publicly.
Yeah, of course he would. You know, that's part of the problem. You know, there's one rule for men, and one rule for women, and we know which way it goes.
Yeah, where the equity revolves around. So,
well, it's the women don't want equity; they want supremacy, and that's what it's all about.
And
but
I feel like they've got it.
You know, we have the problem with the universities here, the gender studies that they have for women in the universities. They're appalling.
And a bit of research on this Dan Rapaccioli, and I don't
He's a newcomer, isn't he, to the
Yeah, so
parliament?
it's only been within the last week that he's been put into place. But as I say, I truly believe this is a very calculated, smart political move to try to give us some breadcrumbs and explain to us and mask it as a three-course meal, and we should be happy with what we've
Aren't
got.
they wonderful?
Question, and it has sadly, it has convinced a few people that, oh no, this is a great step forward. But if you don't want to implement a minister for men, then remove the minister for women and implement a minister for people. That's as simple as,
Right.
it'd be less
That's
divisive.
the only fair and reasonable
Yeah, 100%. So
opportunity we have is to get that on board, because otherwise it's still divided, it's still discriminatory one way or the other,
yeah,
and
exactly.
we're not going to gain anything.
And
They don't care about what happens to men,
no,
and
and the
that's
state
very
level,
clear.
on a state level in this state, South Australia, I had a conversation a few weeks ago with the Labor minister's personal assistant, and a minister for men was actually mentioned to Mr. Peter Malinauskas quite a while back, but his response to that from one of his own ministers was to implement a minister for autism. Now, while I think that's a good thing for the autistic community, I would say a minister for men would be a little bit more above that, given that we've got 47 men a week being coerced into suicide.
Yeah, a little bit more expensive. Yeah, it's certain.
No.
Unfortunately, you're treated like second-class citizens, unfortunately, and that's a really sad thing. They're doing their best to destroy your pride in yourself,
Yep.
as a man, and this is really upsetting, because I've talked to various people. One of them was a Dr. Malcolm George, who was a clinical neurosurgeon in the UK, and he's written a lot about domestic violence. And he says that masculinity, which every man should be proud of, gives men the strength to be gentle.
It does. It really
And
does.
that's a really important statement. You look at some men who you would consider to be weak, they might be more likely to lash out, to be uncertain in their response, because they don't have that security in themselves.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems.
And you're right. From a young age, boys are made to feel shamed for any form of masculinity is replayed to them as toxic. Things that help boys become men later in life have been taken away, and they've been labelled as misogynistic. It's a bloody disgrace.
Yeah, it's really tragic, because it's not true, and it's destroying our life. It's not good for men, and it's certainly not good for women either.
No, and
Because all we've done with women is from going in the 1960s to lifting women up and saying, yes, you've got the rights to do this, make your own decisions, etc. Here's the tools and the information you need to do that. We're now convincing them, or the feminists are convincing them, be afraid.
Yeah.
These men are going to hurt you.
Yep.
So we've now got a whole load of women who are terrified of living and terrified of dealing with another person, because they fear them, because of what the feminists have told them.
Yeah.
So you've got we're going backwards instead of forwards.
We are.
And it's very sad that this is happening.
And
There's a
it's
lot of women now who are struggling to look after children on their own, because they've got rid of the old man with the use of the domestic violence orders. So they're working that much harder. They're having to care for the children. They're having to keep the job down now. So what benefit is that?
No.
And the children are suffering.
Yep. And it's at the expense of society and the norms that we have, where a family, and children especially, need a mum and a dad to be able to understand how life is supposed to plan out. Not just single parent homes where they haven't got the time, their finances are being stretched, their time's not available to nurture and raise these children in the correct manner. And we're seeing that now, where you've just got it's out of control with the young youth in some areas.
Yeah, it is, and we're heading for more problems. You know, we've got more and more children who are having mental health problems, children who are not doing well at school, children who are disobedient, children who are gravitating to gangs and getting into awful trouble with the police and illegal actions.
And young violent women, Sue, have gone through the roof.
Yeah, there's been research done on that. Yeah, they are becoming more violent because everyone tells them they can be.
Yeah,
They
well, and they
have
know
no
there's no
responsibility.
accountability. They don't ever get in trouble for it. They've always got to, it's a man's fault one way or the other, or,
Yeah,
so they start crying, they get a lenient sentence. There's just so many aspects where a female can do a violent crime, and then for some reason or another, whether it be politically or legally, they attempt to justify it because she had a rough life or she previously had something done
yeah,
to her. You
yeah,
know?
or domestic
Yeah,
violence. It's all the excuses come out,
yeah,
and unfortunately, you know, they're believed,
yeah.
which is it's not always the case.
No.
So we need to look much more closely at what's being said, and the young women today need to know that they have responsibility for some of their own actions,
Yes.
just
And
like the
and
boys.
decisions. If you decisions you make, you should be made to comprehend that if you've made the wrong decision, there's probably going to be a punishment for that. But
Yeah,
we're
there's
rewarded.
no harm in that at all. Like every decision has some sort of response to it, doesn't it? So if it's a bad response or it's not what you want, perhaps it'll teach you a lesson for next time.
Yeah.
But you know, I just it's all gone off the rails as far as I'm concerned. I've watched it for 30 years, and it's getting far worse. And what we're seeing with children is far worse. What we're seeing with men is far worse. Look, in the early days, very few men used to say, I'm leaving the country. Now I have quite a lot of them. They want to know which country they can go to. They've had it.
Yeah.
They're off. They don't want to stay here. They say, why should I stay when everybody hates me so much?
Yep.
And that's mostly referring to the women in their lives. And that's quite understandable, because there are other countries where men are still appreciated.
Yeah.
They're still loved, they're still cared for, but not in Australia, not apparently in England, not in America. So the English-speaking countries have been targeted
Yeah.
very strongly.
Yep.
So, you know, we're in a lot of trouble, actually, and we need to find a solution to it that's going to keep everybody happy and that's going to restore our faith in the old systems that we had going that worked. Like marriage has always been regarded as being the safest place for children and for men and women to live. It's supposed to be the secure place. But they don't seem to care about that now, because they say, oh no, women can bring up children. They don't need a man. Forget that.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
No. No. And it's at the destruction of the family unit, isn't it? We both know that that's what they're targeting.